The Siberiad by Stanislav Lem. So this is the 56th book that I've read in this ongoing series that I'm doing, and it's the first book that I've read from Stanislav Lem. It was copyright 1967, and it was originally written in Polish. The translation was done by Michael Kandel in 1974, and this one is also illustrated by Daniel Mroz. And I have this Avon paperback here. And if you've seen, there's quite a few Lem books that are done in this same kind of art style and livery. And if you want, you can pause and read the back there. And it was really cool. The illustrations were, kind of basic black and white sketched illustrations throughout. But they went with the stories in here and just added kind of an extra layer to the storytelling that I really enjoyed. There was quite a few of them, but I'll just show you a few examples there. Now this was a humorous, witty, absurd collection of short stories that are all kind of tied together by our main two characters. And this is a galaxy that's basically all robotic. And while the characters are written in a humanized way, everything is kind of robotic, and they will come across civilizations with kings and queens, and there'll be dragons. But like I said, everything is kind of a robot. There's also some social commentary in this and criticism, and if you saw in the back, there's folk tales, fairy tales, and mythology that are layered in here as well. And I think these were a lot of Polish fairy tales and whatnot. I was kind of lost on some of that, I think, but I still really enjoyed this one overall, and I think everyone could. The storytelling is just done really well. Now, our two main characters in these stories are a couple constructor robots named Thurl and Clepatius. And these guys were some serious characters here. There are some stories where it's just the two of them building and working out problems. And when they're kind of on their own, they're very competitive, almost enemies at times, tricking one another, beating each other up. And like I said, just fiercely competitive. But when they get thrown out across the galaxy and interact with these kingdoms and all these other kind of things, they get themselves into some situations and end up having to kind of work together, and their true friendship kind of shines when they're in those situations. So the writing of these robots was done very well by Lem. Now there's all kinds of stories in this one. There's a story about Thurl, one of the main characters. He built a robot that can create anything as long as it starts with the letter N. And it's a quick little short fun read as they go through some examples of asking this robot to build certain things for him. There's quite a few stories later in the book that are all kind of sort of a little bit more linked together. And I think this is where some of the mythology and folklore comes through. And there was one in particular that was probably the longest story in this one, where they built some storytelling robots for this king in this kingdom. And that was the only point in the book that I felt kind of dragged on a little bit, and probably was kind of my least favorite section of the book. And I don't know if it had to do with my ignorance to some of the Polish mythology, or if it maybe just stretched on a little too long for my liking. But one of my favorites, a couple of my favorites actually, one was about another robot that Thurl makes that can do poetry. And there's almost like this chat GPT, if you're kind of savvy to that these days, where they could give this robot prompts like, write a poem in this style about these kind of things with these kind of criterias. And at first the robot just kind of sends out this garbled garbage. And Thurl, it's almost cartoonish, like he climbs into a hatch of this robot, and I kind of envision some of those stories like the robot here on the cover. But he climbs into a hatch and you hear this banging and hammering, and then he comes out and they try it again. And it's like, nope, not quite right yet. And he climbs back in there and yanks on some wires, and then sure enough, the robot starts working to their liking. But some of the poetry that Lem has this robot recite is very, very complicated and unique, and the one in particular has a lot of math elements that he weaves into it because those are some of the prompts he gave. And it's just really mind-boggling how the translation happened to have worked on this one. I know we have Bart from Bart's Book Space, who grew up in Poland, speaks Polish, and we talked a little bit about this book. If he gets a chance to reread this and compare some of the poetry from the Polish translation to the English, it would be really interesting to me to know how well, if it was just worked seamlessly, or if the translator had to do some magic on that one. But it was just really fascinating, some of the poetry that came out of this robot. And then another one that really stood out for me was we had another kingdom. This was a little bit later in the book, and one of our robots was kind of asked, or he ends up kind of creating this whole civilization, but it turns out this thing is like 1/1000th scaled down. So this whole kind of world fits in this little box. And they go into some really interesting thought. It's almost like a thought experiment of, even just because these entities that he created, these robots, are tiny, like, do they really count? Can you just throw them away, or are you just destroying a whole civilization? And it was done really well. I liked the way the ending went on that one. Most of that story had me smiling all the way through it. Actually, most of this entire this whole collection had me smiling through it. So this is definitely a recommender. This is probably like a good solid 4-star read for me. I think you could probably take this as a palate cleanser read in between some other works because of all the humor and everything thrown in there. And I think if I could go back, I would probably, read a few of the short stories, maybe take a break, read something else, come back, read a few more. But I kind of just binged all the way through it. And like I said, towards the end, I got a little, one of them just seemed a little long-winded, and I just wonder if I was just kind of saturated too much with it. But, I've got a few of his other works. I know Solaris is a completely different novel. I know Lem seems like he had quite the range as an author. And so I'm kind of wondering if he wrote some more like humorous stories here, because I have quite a few. And I'm really interested to read more of this kind of stuff in the future. So let me know if you've read that one, or if any of his other works kind of follow along those lines. And my next up, I'm kind of torn between Brute Orbits by George Zebrowski and Rax by Michael G. Coney. I'll probably start Blue Orbits and see how that feels. And then if I'm not feeling it, I might switch over to this one, because this one's like 140 pages or something. Oh, maybe 190 pages. But so that's it for that one. Definitely check it out. And once again, thanks for watching.